Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you, and thank you for joining me once again for another spirit review video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a couple of bottles near and dear to my heart, of course, because I am part of the team that creates these wonderful blends of Saint's Alley. But these are our special edition releases that we have for the, the holiday season, the fall of 2022. Currently it is September 28th, 2022. And this coming Saturday, we're going to be having a distillery release up there at the Ironroot Republic Distillery in Denison, Texas, to launch these, all right? Now, following that, like in very short order, probably the very first week of October, if not this Saturday, hopefully, depending on, Total Wines in different states, but they should be on Total Wine shelves as well. And not just in Texas. We are well out beyond in all the other states. I know California and Florida, they'll all be getting it. Well, hopefully Florida is okay after this, unfortunate hurricane that we have coming in right now. But beyond that, we're going to be in all the other states that Total Wine's in pretty much. Again, there's a couple that we're not quite in just because we can't produce enough. We're really trying, but we got to maintain a high level of quality. All right, but let's talk about the players. The Herald Pinot de Charentes finish. All right, this is a special edition play on the regular Herald, which is an Armagnac finish. Well, this one does contain a lot of Armagnac cask finished whiskeys in it, but it also has that Pinot de Charentes cask finished bourbons in there as well. Now, Pinot de Charentes, if you're unfamiliar, it's basically they take unfiltered grape juice, they'll fortify it with cognac, so bring it up to about 20% ABV. They'll go into barrels, and they will barrel age them for, I think a minimum's like a year. Most of the time, it's almost 2 years, and upwards of 10 plus years. Okay. Once they dump those casks, we were able to get our hands on a few of those. They were very hard to get, to be honest, and filled them with bourbon. We let them mature up for several months, and when I say several months, I know they were at least, they were in there a while. Probably I would say somewhere between 6 and 9 months they were in there. It was a good amount of time, but they're really big barrels. So big barrels, again, it's a lot of liquid to wood. The ratio takes a little longer for the the right amount of influence to get in there. But we were checking them along the way, and they're spot on. Right when we did this pull, they were great. So we will be tasting this one, Pinot de Charentes and Armagnac finished, the Herald. Special edition, bottled at 107 proof, retail pricing $80, $79.99 on shelf. Let's see. Of course, the one thing to keep in mind with all our Saint's Alley products is, to me, the one thing that makes this a little special, and you're going to notice it, not only when you taste it, but even if you let a dribble go down your glass on the bottle here, when it dries, you'll see that little oily white kind of stain that it leaves. Well, that's because we add a little bit of Ironroot whiskey into every batch, all right? And what happens is that the MGP distillate comprises the majority of the whiskey that's in here is column distilled. Column stills produce a vast amount of whiskey, but they don't impart a ton of oils, all right? The oils are coming from the copper pot still that Ironroot uses. Big, massive Vendome still. Super oily distillate, and of course Ironroot Harbinger bourbon, world's best bourbon last year, has been winning tons of awards, also with Hubris and all these other pot distilled bourbons that they do, but that goes into here as well, so you end up with this big rich mouth coating whiskey. And so again, back to the basics. The Herald Special Edition Pinot de Charentes, 107 proof, $79.99. Over here, the Nobleman Rye. Nobleman Rye, first rye Saint's Alley has done. Matter of fact, Ironroot has not released a rye yet, but it contains some of the Ironroot pot distilled rye that is barrel aging up right now. And we had to search through those single barrels, and we found some that were just phenomenal. But again, they're not ready to release that just yet because some of the others are just lagging a little bit behind. And so when they all come together, we'll be seeing an Ironroot rye whiskey pot distilled rye. It's going to be fantastic. But some of that's in the Nobleman. The Nobleman takes advantage and actually gets its name from a noble rot wine, which is Tokaji. It's a Hungarian sweet wine that what happens is they let the grapes kind of stay on the vine past, the ripe point, and it starts kind of shriveling a little bit. It starts condensing those sugars and kind of concentrating the flavors. And then because those vines are located in a kind of a valley where the fog constantly rolls in the morning, they actually get a little bit of a fruit fungus on them, okay? And that fruit fungus will get onto the grape, but it dries almost as soon as it gets on there, because as the day progresses and the sun comes back out, they end up drying up, and it just repeats that process. So it never gets like, it never goes into a rotten stage. It just gets this little bit of a fruit fungus that kind of adds a little bit of more, I guess, different flavors. Kind of like, you'll get like a beeswax tone. Sometimes they'll say saffron and stuff like that. So that's just something that we were kind of interested in to see how that played. We were really amazed how it came out. I think you will be as well, especially when I start getting into the nosing and tasting of this. But it is also bottled at 107 proof. Retail pricing also should be around $79.99. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the nosing and tasting. The Herald Special Edition Pinot de Charentes finish, as well as all those Armagnac casks. Here we go on the nose. Oof, my goodness. All right, lots of baked apples, brandied cherries, honey drizzled like poached pears. There's cocoa, there's already leather, baking spices on this one. There's a little bit of an orange oil tone to it. Deep, rich oak, kind of like I always describe this tone when it starts going into a very slightly apple cider, and you get this really nice rich wood tone. It almost reminds me of kind of like a polished mahogany, something like that. Maybe a little blackberries. Sweet, there's like a sweet nuttiness in here as well. Oh, so good, so good. Let's go ahead and taste it while we're at it. Okay. On the palate. Medium, just above medium viscosity. Wow. Oh my goodness. The way that enters, that is complex. Okay, here we go. Brown sugar caramel on the sweetness profile initially. You get hit really early with those kind of baked pears, those baked apples, plums, cherries. Oof. Back end is totally, that's where you start getting these really dark tones, but you get a lot of fruits up front. You also get a little bit of that orange oil that I was picking up on the nose comes through as a little citrusy orange zest in there as well. That's what provides almost like a little zing, little tanginess to everything to kind of brighten it up a little bit. Really soft, good for 107 proof. I think if you're after really high ABV spirits, you're used to big bourbons, you're going to be very happy with the 107 because it has enough power, especially given with all these finishes. It has a lot of power, but it's not brutal, right? You don't feel the need to, you definitely have to have water. That said, let me tell you, the one thing I've noticed about Saints Alley Spirits, as I've been a part of them and we've been working with them for so long, is when you add water to these, they love it. They start releasing a ton of the cask finishes. So if you taste one and you're like, oh, I really love that Armagnac finish, or on the Herald, add some water to it. It's just going to amplify that up. Now, of course, remember, when you add water to a spirit, always give it about 30 seconds to a minute. Let it calm back down. Because if you just add water and then you go to taste it right away, you're going to get that cinnamon heat, and you're also going to pick up this tannic oak. Those are the two elements that kind of jump out of the glass immediately. They will calm back down. They will kind of integrate, but you have to give them a minute. Okay. Oh, finish on this just rolling. And that real, it's got a really nice pecan, almost a little bit of a walnut finish that goes on with that cocoa. There's leather in there. That orange oil is still pulling into the finish. Big, like, um, you know, that oaky vanilla that you expect in a good bourbon, that's in here as well. Plums are still going on the finish. Yeah, you won't be cut short on this finish, let me tell you that. Ooh. All right, try it one more time. Let's see if we can pull it all together. Yeah, that brown sugar caramel, get big fruit hit, that apples, pears, cherries, little blackberry, little plum. On the mid palate, you do notice that little 107 proof because you do get that baking spice kind of come in, add a little swell, but it doesn't go too far. The cocoa, the leather, it's almost like a honeycomb element to the whole experience. That polished mahogany tone that I like, that's in here. Sweet almonds in there with that pecan walnut elements, that little nuttiness. It has some sweet almonds in there as well. Yeah, that orange oil still rolling. Little, is that? Yeah, there's a little bit of, and with the plums, there's almost like a little bit of a sweet date and a clove element as well. I really like that kind of honeyed pear, that little beeswax thing. That's coming from the Pinot de Charentes casks. And I'll let you in on, you know, because some of the cool things, you know, I get to review a lot of spirits and try to, you know, help everybody make educated buys out there. But, you know, a lot of times it's hard to get all the details. And I'm afraid this video can go too long because I know everything about this whiskey, both of them. And so I could go on and on about the different complexities and how the barrels were maturing and all that. That could take forever. So I'm trying to keep this short. You know, it's all about that balance. We want to give you the full experience of all the casks involved without, again, covering up the bourbon. We want everything to play just right. The cocoa, the leather, that rich oak. This does not, thing that I love about these is, you know, while the base bourbon itself is somewhere about, I would say anywhere between 4 and like 6 years old, okay? You're not going to get that real new wood character that you sometimes find out there. And that's a combination of these really old casks that we're using. The Armagnac casks are almost 20 years old. Some of the cognac casks we have are 30. We're getting some 40-year-old casks in, stuff like this. Those kind of elements all work together to really make a bourbon or a rye, in this case over here, feel much older than they are, okay? So you know, I encourage everyone to go to Total Wine, ask for a taste. You know, they'll usually let you taste them, and hopefully you can, you know, experience that for yourself. All right, we're going to move on. Okay, but moving on to the Nobleman. Again, it's pronounced Tokai. Of course, there's different dialects in Hungary, and there might be a little play on that, but for the most part, just call it Tokai and Rye. It works, all right? 107 proof. The Nobleman. Oh, good grief. You know I love rye, right? I love rye. I love single malts. I love them all. But a good rye, I really love. This is it for days. Because I'm always looking for, and when you ask me, you know, people ask me, what's your favorite rye? It's kind of hard. There's some amazing single barrels from Whistle Pig along the way, and, you know, 10-year-old, 13-year-olds. You look at the old Jefferson's 21 was phenomenal, even better than 25. Yeah, I mean, Pikesville Rye, come on, that's great for the money, always has been. But some of the best ones that come to mind were single barrel Whistle Pigs. One was the Blind Pig's Pick, that's a store in Houston, Texas. They did a 13-year-old called Creation of Pig. That was just such an old rye character. Tons of orange oil, bookish. It, you know, just made you feel like you were sitting in a big kind of cushy leather chair and maybe a little pipe tobacco in the air. Well, I love that when it gets into that old rye character. But I also love, I know there was some really good younger ryes, you know, some Old Pepper does some pretty cool stuff every now and then. again, one that comes to mind, just an amazing specs pick that Whistle Pig did. That was really high ABV. I want to say it was like 132 proof. It was very big, but it was a younger rye territory. It was more of that herbaceousness, the brightness of the rye, and good fruit, orchard fruit punch, that type thing. I love those too. This is a combination of the two. As a matter of fact, I know when I was originally writing my notes for tasting notes for the Nobleman, I talked about it's a tale of two whiskeys. As a matter of fact, the rye whiskeys that went in here, I think there were 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, so not young by any means. But what I mean by when I say the young, again, it's typically where you'll find a 5, 6, 7-year-old rye will taste younger than when you start getting into the 13, 15, 18, 21s, all right? But the way these age up in Texas, the way these Tokaji Casks reacted, they ended up tasting much older, especially on the back half of the actual finish, all right? All right. Sorry, like I said, this video, I'm trying to keep it short, but it's a lot of information in my head. All right, on the nose. Baked spiced apples. It's got a really nice, like a natural raspberry and cherry tone. Nothing artificial. Matter of fact, I'm super sensitive to artificial flavors like that. That bugs me. Because I don't mind, I don't even mind, like a maraschino cherry, but just when it gets so intense and it starts reminding me almost like I don't know, I think it's a childhood thing, maybe a little cough syrup medicine where you get that really fake cherry, that really fake orange, that type thing. Ugh, can't handle it. So, but this one, I get, that baked spiced apples, you get a little bit of that pears in there as well. You get a really nice, dense rye characteristic. Clove, there's that really nice apple cider vinegar tone to the rye. I don't know if that's something that just happens up in the Ironroot Distillery, but I've picked that up a lot in all the barrels that we age up there. Again, we get a really nice flow of wind in there. We get not too much humidity, but it's not too dry either. We have a really nice area for maturing up barrels, but when they start reaching that peak where they're getting really good, that's when I'll start picking up this polish, a little bit of apple cider vinegar in there. It almost goes into that, apple cider, because it's not super vinegary, not like white vinegar. It's like apple cider with just a little twang to it. All right. Lots of clove. Big orange oil in here as well. Pipe tobacco. Old leather. There's almost a real savory tone to this whiskey. It makes you salivate a little bit. What I'm thinking right here is the herbal tones. Typically young ryes, you'll get that kind of real big herbal grassy thing. This one, it would almost be like, I don't really get too much of that. I mean, you could talk me into maybe like a sweet grass, sweet buffalo grass, that type thing. But definitely is not going into, some people worry about MGP dill. This isn't going there. All right, let's get to the taste. Yowza. That is, and it's still transitioning. That Tokaji Cask on that mid palate, you're going to notice it when you taste that. All right. You enter, and of course, you're going to get that kind of baked apple, Christmas cake, fig pudding, that type, element up front. Almost, not really, it's brown sugar, almost into molasses, figs, dates, Little bit of that, little bit of like a brandied cherry tone on that mid palate. Turkish tobacco. You start getting into this really pipe tobacco realm, orange oil. But that Christmas cake, that fig pudding thing is still rolling onto the finish. I had a friend that tasted it, and he was first thing he thought was, this is like what Midwinter's Night Dram was, right? Like when it first came out, batches, so it was Acts 1, almost to 3, I think, were just big on that Christmas cake, Christmas spice character. This has that. So if you're familiar with, a Midwinter's Night Dram, it's kind of like that, but on the mid palate, that Tokai just takes off and it drives it into this really whole unique experience. I'm trying to figure out it. Besides the Turkish tobacco, if this was like a single malt whiskey, I would kind of try to translate it to you as being how a Mortlock can sometimes have a real savory, almost a meatiness to them. That Tokai, when it twists on that mid palate, and this never gets into that real spicy tone, or it does not drink its ABV. This drinks like 100 proof to me. But those baked apples, they really roll. And I would call these red apples. These are not green apples. They're not too tart. Yeah. Orange oil, the clove, the leather. A little hint of anise in here. But again, very bookish, very old rye territory on the back end. I'm in love with both of these. They're totally different. And again, if you have the regular Herald and you taste this side by side, I encourage you. You will definitely be able to pick out what those Pinot Casks did, and you'll be amazed. The Nobleman, if you love rye whiskey, you're going to love the Nobleman, in my opinion. But the flavors, again, linger. Oh, I don't know how to do that. I guess that's the best I can do on the flavor profile for you for today, because you get that kind of creaminess to the whole experience. That's why it doesn't taste its ABV. That savory, almost like almost like a baked brie. So it has this really nice creaminess to the whole thing. You end up on that cocoa leather, that pipe tobacco, all those figs and dates, beeswax again kind of in there, orange oil rolling in the finish, that Turkish pipe tobacco, a little bit of that vanilla in there. Hopefully you can get your hands on it, okay? Now saying this, hopefully you're a patron of mine. Patrons are going to get this video 2 weeks early. This is how I do all my YouTube videos. It goes on Patreon first. They're going to hear about it. They're going to go run out there and probably pick these up. Hopefully I'll see you on Saturday at the distillery. If you're here in Texas, North Texas area, love to see you up there. But if not, again, September 30th, first week of October, they're going to be on shelves. I don't expect there to be a whole lot, so I expect them to pretty much roll and fly out the door. But hopefully you can get your hands on some, okay? Of course, next year we have more plans for more special editions. So, if you miss out on these, don't worry. There's always next year. But again, I really do think you should get out there and find these. All right. Thank y'all, as always, for watching both on YouTube and Patreon. Of course, again, join me over at patreon.com/LiquorHound if you're able. But I appreciate each and every one of you, especially all the great comments I find in the comments section. So keep leaving them, and I'll get back to them just as soon as I can. Everyone have a great day, and cheers.